Goedemorgen. Good morning. Hey, welcome. Thanks for your time. Final day and first session of the day. Although we start at 10, great start of the day. So many of you know me, but for people, colleagues who don't know me, my name is Ruben. I'm a Dutch guy. I'm a former Frame CTO, active in the end-user computing space for a long time, since I left school. So that's probably a couple of years ago. My background is technology, and I want to spend time, 40 minutes to share my experience from the field in desktop as a service in public cloud. This is not a Frame story. This applies to VMware, Citrix, Microsoft, Amazon, Nutanix, like the industry. That's my goal. I will highlight different things around storage, around GPUs. Why DaaS? What is DaaS? What is stored in DaaS? What is the control plane? It seems that the new buzzword, or the new drinking word this year is control plane. So it might be good to know what is inside. So it will be interesting session. And my goal is to make you the DaaS expert. Imagine a large IT vendor. A vendor we know and we use every day, announces this. Run apps, 4K, 60 FPS, high-end graphics, runs instantly, anywhere access, no client, agent, receiver, browsers the platform, always getting better on the fly. Sounds interesting, man. Imagine the audience is 2.2 billion. Probably some money to be made. And it's available this year. And let's start this year and next year. Anyone any clue what I'm talking about? Chris? You know what it is?
Yeah, I've seen your slides.
Okay, that's not fair. What is the answer? So I know if you pay attention to the slide.
Google Roxia. Stadia.
Yeah. So it's gaming streaming as a service. It means you will use like local data centers across the globe to run games. And if you look at the core technology of these games, what is it? Any device with a Chrome browser, Chrome OS, remoting protocol, 4K at 60 FPS, running games on VM, on a server with a GPU.
So mobile as well.
So mobile, yeah. Like you can use if it runs like a Chrome browser, it could be any device, you can use it. And it might just in the same direction with their game streaming service. Why is it relevant for this DaaS space? Fundamentally, if you look at the core concept of game streaming as a service, it's about in DaaS it's like same functionality, same core functions. The application is different. Instead of running games, you have different applications. So Google is in this space, and it will take a while before they are established and beat like Sony or Microsoft in that space. And it's important to have content. That's why they are opening up studios to create their own content. It's important to have a relationship with ISVs who make games. So it's a little bit different story. But the technology, fundamental technology behind Stadia is what I will talk about, desktop as a service. So you can say Stadia is, quote, desktop as a service. Not like a Windows desktop as we know desktop. But the core concept is the same. They are also disrupting that space. They are disrupting the gaming industry in that context. And when I talk about we, it's like Nutanix, it's Amazon, it's Microsoft, it's Citrix, it's VMware. We are also disrupting ourselves, and we are disrupting this space as well. Some months ago, some people know that I work for PKR. There are PKR or former PKR colleagues here. And a couple of months ago, Patrick, you know maybe that story. I got an invitation to share Frame at PQR. And it's not about PQR, so if PQR colleagues are listening, sorry for that. But it's a broader story. So when I asked, hey, when I was CTO at PQR, how many Exchange colleagues did we have? And the response was like 7, 8 Exchange diehard colleagues who were designing, building Exchange infrastructures. And I said, well, okay, who is doing Exchange designs today? And helping customers with like Exchange on-prem. 2 people raised their hand. I said, why 2? Because 1 is risk, that's why it's 2. And are you full-time busy with like Exchange deployments and so on? And the answer is no. So I said, okay, what happened? Guess what happened? This happened. And then I started my frame conversation. Because why I did this? Because many in the audience were die-hard Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, end-user computing designers. And this applies to you as well. So it's a little bit strange to talk about desktop as a service, to be honest. Because many of you are in the game, in the space of exchange. It's not exchange, but it's in the space of designing, building, and it's an art. And it's good to be proud to master that art. The art of server-based computing, the art of VDI. The world is changing, that's my point here. So the question to my colleagues when I was on stage, okay, what are you doing with that change? And maybe this change applies now, maybe this change applies next 5 months, or maybe next 5 years. I don't know, it depends. But change is happening. What are you doing with that change? What I see happening when I look at the vendors in this space, as a service is happening. Like Exchange from Office 365 is happening. Why is this happening? It's a good question. There are many answers for that. Could be, we are experts in that space, so for us maybe it doesn't apply. But customers they see like the VDI space as a risk because they don't have the knowledge. Maybe they hire us to help them with that. But there are just so many people who can help them with it. So there's a risk that you don't have the right people, or you can retain the right people, or it's tough to get the right knowledge on time with the right people. Maybe customers are moving to public cloud with data in public cloud. I want to leverage public cloud as well because it's best to run apps and data close to each other. We know that for 20 years. If you stretch apps and data, a problem will arise. So what if your data more and more is in public cloud? Well, why not run apps in public cloud as well? Or maybe you're more focused on operational expense instead of capital expense. Or maybe you're a project-driven organization. You want to use flexible cloud services. There can be many reasons to use public cloud services. I'm not talking about vendor specifics, it's really more like the concept itself. These are vendors I see in this space. I wrote many years ago VDI Smackdown. I cannot write a Smackdown like that because I'm by design biased because there's an employer called Nutanix paying my salary. And the point here is not about features or technology comparison as the first step in the conversation. The landscape, if I divide the landscape, and that's just my view on this landscape, is I divide the landscape in 3 sort of segments. Vendors who are born in like the VDI space, and VDI is between quotes because with VDI I mean app remoting, desktop remoting, published desktop, persistent, non-persistent, like this whole industry of virtual client computing. I call it VDI, although I know it means different things for different people. There are many vendors in this space who were born in the quote, VDI era. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not my point. There are vendors born in the as a service era. Okay, WVD is an example, and I think Jim and Christian mentioned it yesterday. Microsoft tried first to enter this as a service space with Azure Remote and ARA, and they failed. Why did they fail? Because they tried to pick software and make it a service. That's my simple conclusion. And you cannot, it's not easy to just pick up software and make it a service when the software is not designed to run as a service. That's why they killed, in my opinion, Azure Remote App and start building a new platform. RDMI, today WVD. They are born in this space. Like Amazon is, like Frame is, like my company is, like 8 years ago. You can debate, but that's a different conversation. Managed desktop for sure, WVD for sure. So that's the space. And then there are options to run, and I use my hands for that. So imagine this fist is the control plane. I will explain later what the control plane is. And this hand are the workloads, is the infrastructure to run workload machines, to run apps and desktops. Control plane is a cloud service, that's what this means. And workers is like this hand, the machines to run apps and desktops. It is possible if you have a hybrid model to run the control plane in a cloud service and to run workload machines on-prem. And these virtual machines on-prem are quote, managed and controlled by this backplane, control plane, this broker. That's what I mean with this particular one here. So what is desktop as a service core? So what is desktop as a service? The challenge with desktop as a service is it can mean different things to different people. If you ask a managed service provider, do you provide desktop as a service? Could be a full desktop or money, same bucket. They said, well, yes, I provide desktop as a service. So that's, from an end customer perspective, desktop as a service. If you ask Frame, do you provide desktop as a service? They say, yes, we provide desktop as a service. You ask VMware, same story. So it could mean different things to different people. I'll explain later the question, who is managing what? Because that's one of the core questions. Who is responsible for which kind of sort of technology in this stack? But the core of desktop as a service is what I call control plane, broker, backplane. And this is, I used a Frame slide, and I removed Frame as much as I can, because my point is not about Frame. It's more what is in this control plane. And there are different things in the control plane, also depending on the vendor itself. But in essence, it is an IaaS orchestrator. It means the control plane will have a connection to infrastructure, to power on, power off, delete, create virtual machines on the fly to run apps and desktops. That's an example of this IaaS orchestrator. There is capacity management to increase or decrease capacity based on smart scaling or based on activity. There's a remoting protocol. There's a gateway service to secure access your remote app or remote desktop. And this remote app or remote desktop could run in public cloud or on-prem, that's a different conversation. There's an identity component to connect with identity systems, maybe with Google or Azure AD or with Ping or Okta, SAML-based, OAuth-based platform. There is a component called user profile management. Maybe you want to control how user profiles are being managed. Maybe there are APIs to automate activities, or there should be APIs if you ask me, in a control plane like that, if it's born in cloud. So what is stored in the control plane? It's a good question. Like I don't know what is stored in the Amazon control plane or WVD control plane or VMware Cloud control plane. So I don't know. I could ask Andy, but that's not my point. The point is, it's a good question to ask if you're the consultant or the customer, what is stored in the control plane? And there is no, for instance, there are no document files stored in the control plane. There are no medical records stored in the control plane. I can explain from a Frame perspective what is in the control plane, so that's what I did. My point is not about Frame, my point is, okay, ask yourself and ask the vendor what is stored in the control plane, because that might have impact in the direction if you can use desktop as a service or not. Maybe from a legal or regulation perspective, you can't. Could be. It's a question you should ask as well. Some people think, well, okay, the control plane means that the vendor has access to my files, my databases, to my medical records. That is not the case. But there is data in the control plane, as you can see here. So there's system metadata, telemetry data, system configuration, login events. In this case, Frame knows, okay, Ruben, from this IP address, I did this time from this type of device connected to the control plane. That is login event and telemetry data and metadata. There is a connection maybe with Google Identity or with Azure or with Okta. That means there is a hash encrypted but stored in the control plane. Like there is a hash encrypted and stored on your phone. You open Dropbox or OneDrive on your phone, you don't need to authenticate every time. Same story. And usage information. Ruben started desktop at 7 o'clock in the morning, used the application X amount of time, because we use that to give insights about the usage pattern. So it's important to understand what is in the control plane. The control plane can communicate with public cloud or public clouds, depending what kind of vendor it is. In Amazon, it's public cloud, Amazon public cloud. In WVD, it's Azure public cloud. And that's what the API gateways do. That's the easy part, because public cloud by design is able to use APIs. If you want to use on-prem, and use vCenter as an example, or Prism Central as an example, or maybe SCVMM as an example, these platforms are not designed to communicate through public cloud control plane with SCVMN or vCenter. That means there is a sort of broker, a sort of connector appliance to make sure that security, that communication is happening. And that means that this service will communicate with, for instance, vCenter or Business Central to power on, power off, clone, delete machines. Then from an end user perspective, you want to access applications. So you log in, communicate with the control plane, identities, connection, and then you start a session. And this is like a remote desktop session. Not like RDP as a protocol, but just the protocols in general. Could be that there's a gateway service here, could be maybe Netscaler is here, or whatever kind of technology. If it's on-prem, it could be that you don't want to connect, if you ask me, you don't want to connect an RDP protocol to the control plane, and then from the control plane back to the VM. Imagine, I asked a question yesterday to Jim and Christian, imagine the control plane is running in Amsterdam, West Europe. And I'm not in Amsterdam, I'm in South Africa. And I want to use, for instance, on-prem resources in South Africa, or an Azure data center in South Africa, or an AWS data center in South Africa. I want to use my, as much as possible, local, like remote desktop traffic. That's an important question to understand as well. So focus on apps and workspaces, we do the rest. Who is we? If it's a system integrator, then we could be, well, we is here. Andy mentioned yesterday that Amazon is also able to manage this one, so we could be Amazon. In the frame context, we will not manage the workspace. We will not install, upgrade, configure the applications from the customer. So we will stop here, but we make sure that this is extremely simple. It means that you could be you, or you could be like the provider, the managed service provider, is responsible for installing, configuring, managing applications, user profiles, making sure the application communicate with the backend systems. Like that's all part of this layer above. That's an important topic. Who's responsible for what? Then the question also arises, okay, when to use public cloud or when to use on-premises? Yeah, good topic. When to use on-prem often is like when these characteristics apply. You say, oh, that's not the case. When to use public cloud is when this applies. The beauty, if you ask me, of a control plane which is able to support both, is that you can pick and choose whatever makes sense for the use case. This is not rocket science, if you ask me. But many people think that this is like the holy grail for everything, which is also not the case. Some people think that this is the holy grail for everything, which is not the case either. I see many customers using public cloud for very good reasons. So, what about licensing? This is a tough topic, to be honest. And I'm not a Microsoft expert, and I don't have the ambition to be a Microsoft licensing expert. But I want to explain like my simple view on what, from a licensing perspective. There are three components in licensing. Some of the vendors in the space merge these three components, and you think, well, there's just one component. That's not, from a sales perspective, might be one component, but still there are three components. There is a subscription to use the control plane, like Citrix Cloud subscription or Frame subscription. Could be named user, could be concurrent user, can be maybe 1 month contract, can be year contract, whatever it is, but still like this one. Then you have a Microsoft license to access remote apps or remote desktops. Could be RDS-Cal, can be RDS-Cell, can be VDA, can be bundled in the Microsoft 365 license, whatever it is. But that's like the second one. And the third one is, okay, I need infrastructure to run apps and desktops. Can be your own infrastructure on-prem, can be a cloud subscription you buy through the cloud provider, through Citrix or through Microsoft as a Microsoft partner, or can be your own subscription as well. So as an example, you have VMware Horizon Cloud, you have the right Microsoft licenses, remote desktop licenses, and the OS licenses as attached to that. And then you have like the infrastructure to run apps. Could be maybe VMware on AWS as an example. These are the core, from a licensing perspective, to keep in mind. Sounds simple, often is like, when you understand the basics, it is simple, but there are all like many different caveats in that, especially with the Microsoft licensing one. And The Microsoft licensing one, if you ask me, is, let's see how we can make it a little bit polite. It's restricted, or in favor for Microsoft. And I like to have choice, and I like a fair playing field as well. So if you ask me, it would be great if customers can use Windows 10 on Google and Amazon and Azure without all kinds of restrictions. It would be great to use Windows 10 quote, multi-user. It would be Windows 10 Enterprise, multi-session, multi-user for all, which is not the case today. It's not something I can change. It has nothing to do with Citrix or VMware or Frame or Amazon. It's just how this licensing, like EULA, is applies. What about VDI versus DaaS? That's a question I get a lot. Is there a versus? Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes customers have VDI today and are looking for Amazon Workspaces or another platform, so then it becomes sort of a versus. And I created a slide some months ago to highlight a couple of sort of characteristics around enterprise VDI and characteristics around DaaS. And what I see is that vendors who are born in this space trying to move to this space, and vendors born in this space trying to use elements of this space. I use this to explain customers or community friends like, hey, what are you looking for? A couple of months ago, I was in Germany for a super large financial institute, 100,000 of concurrent users. Their update process, their update process takes sometimes like half year plus. So when I say, hey, Frame updates weekly, they are like, okay, that doesn't fit in our process. So sometimes that's a very simple example. So sometimes like elastic by design or highly innovative, maybe that doesn't fit with the customer. So when to use VDI, when to use DaaS? The tough part about this topic, you can talk for 40 minutes about this topic, to be honest. If you understand the VDI stack, like many of, I would say all, or many of us do, and you're in the process to know more and more about DaaS, then you can have a reasonable conversation about VDI versus DaaS. If you only know VDI, then you will probably try to hit DaaS. If you only know DaaS, then you try to hit VDI. If you know both, then you know the pros and cons, and then from a consulting perspective, you can educate your customer. You know what their use case is, what their challenges are, what their ideas are, to explain, hey, VDI makes more sense, because you are an events organization, and you cannot rely on a control plane running as a cloud service. Or maybe you have like a special regulation in healthcare, and this control plane doesn't have this certification. Or this VDI vendor doesn't have the technology specifically you're looking for. Maybe you want to use, just make something up right now, maybe you want to use Skype for Business offloading, but WVD, as an example, doesn't support Skype for Business offloading. Only Teams offloading is in the making. They just pick up a couple of random things. While VDI, maybe that technology is available. So this is like the simple response to that. What are the biggest challenges in adopting public cloud? Biggest challenges are cost, business case, trust, performance. So in my opinion, don't be a lemming. If a customer says, hey, public cloud first, in my opinion, doesn't mean public cloud only. And you could say, well, that's easy because you support both public cloud and on-prem. But there's a reason why Amazon and Microsoft are creating, I would say, like on-prem services as well. Amazon Outpost, Microsoft Azure Stack Up. Why are these big vendors creating on-prem solutions as well, when everything is like public cloud? Well, there are reasons to use public cloud, and there are reasons why not to use public cloud. In my opinion, reality is hybrid. Let's spend like 10-ish minutes around performance experiences and notes from the field. So hopefully you get an impression already, like, hey, this desktop as a service, what is in the desktop as a service, VDI versus DaaS, the vendors in this space, where do these vendors fit. I want to share storage and GPU experiences in desktop as a service. Before I do so, ask the question, okay, what defines a PC or what defines a workstation? And from a performance perspective, it is different things. This is not rocket science for us. But sometimes we forget when we think about public cloud. Sometimes we think, well, public cloud is great, and in my opinion, it is great, and will solve all the challenges we have. And especially when you're pushing towards more like a high-performance workstation or a high-performance computing environment, or maybe like a normal, like shared, like Zenith type environment, but you forget about these things. You think, well, storage is all great, storage is high-performing in Azure, should be good to go. Should is the bad thing. You need to make sure. You need to, from a design perspective, also need to be sure. And I will share some insights where should can be very, very wrong. So storage latency, throughput, IOPS, CPU cores. Sometimes there are apps who don't rely on many CPU cores, but just on clock speed. What if your application runs best with a 3-point-something gigahertz clock speed CPU, and you don't have that CPU in public cloud? Or not in the public cloud you prefer? Well, that could be a reason. But then sometimes you cannot like go to public cloud from that perspective, or not with an application specific. Or you say, well, this is what it is. Adjust perception with that. GPU, we'll talk about that. Network to backend. I mentioned earlier, apps and data. If you stretch them, can be challenging. There are, of course, great options like Express Route and Direct Connect, like a light path to make sure that latency is low and bandwidth is high, but there's a cost associated with that. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, let's dig a little bit deeper in the storage performance in public cloud. This is an example, and I use Azure specifically because many of us are in this Microsoft space, and many of us are interested in using Azure or Azure services. Azure, there's an instance type, and it's not about this instance type, it's called DaaS v3. The S stands for you are able to use premium storage. If you look at the specs, you could say, well, this is not a bad machine. This machine is able to handle 12,800 IOPS. Oh, not too bad. To put it in perspective, your local, like a modern local machine can handle maybe 40,000 IOPS, or 50,000 IOPS, or 100,000 IOPS if you use NVMe. Do you need these IOPS? Probably not. But let's give some perspective about what performance means. You can say, oh, I want to use this machine. This is a CPU-only machine, so no GPUs. I want to use this machine for maybe Zenith or RDSH type workload. Sounds good. But there are different options from a storage perspective in Azure. There are 4 storage options in Azure. You have standard HDD, you have standard SSD, you have premium SSD, and you have ultra SSD. These are the 4 storage options. There are more options, but these are the 4 options usable for like VMs in like VDI and custom session nodes. Ultra SSD is designed for more like SAP type scenarios. Premium, standard SSD, and standard HDD are the options you can use in the context of Azure. Standard HDD is a bad thing. Standard HDD means latency all over the place, and IOPS is 500. And latency all over the place is the really bad thing. Now you can say, well, okay, forget that one. So there are 2 left: standard SSD and premium SSD. Standard SSD, you might say, well, that's great. The term SSD means extreme fast, because I know SSD because that's what I use at home. But standard SSD means 500 IOPS per disk. 500, 500, and consistent low latency, which is a good thing. Premium SSD means something else, and I want to explain what that means. Premium SSD means this 12,800 IOPS, but when do I get this amount of IOPS? The interesting thing with Azure is that storage performance and capacity is aligned like this. You have capacity and you have performance. If you have a lot of capacity, you get a lot of performance right now. That's what you see here. So I have 1 terabyte drive, and that means I get 500 IOPS. So 1 terabyte, drive? 5,000, yeah, that's what I didn't say that. 5,000. So that's not bad, but do I need a 1 terabyte drive? Probably not. Maybe I want to have a 1 gigabyte drive. Or 10 gigabyte drive. Or a 100 gigabyte drive makes more sense. With a 200 gigabyte drive, which probably makes more sense. Then you see that the amount of apps will lower like dramatically. That's this line I mentioned earlier. That's something to keep in mind. Don't be fooled about the statistics in the like Azure or other vendors. It doesn't Azure specifically, but understand what it means. But isn't Ultra SD or Premium SD the answer then for this storage demand? Sometimes it is, but Ultra SD is designed for different type of workloads. Ultra SD only works for the data drive, not for the OS drive. So the C drive cannot be an Ultra SD, even if you want to pay for that and want to use it. The Ultra SD is only meant for the data drive. And premium storage is great, but also comes with a cost. But not all instance types support premium storage. This D8S V3 supports, that's what the S means. But as an example, the cloud workstation, the NV6, does not support premium storage. So it's something to keep in mind as well. Alrighty, but with app layering and app attach, or with user profile disk, with AWS or Liquidware or other vendors, will this storage issue still be an issue? Because if you can just run your apps in the container from an other storage device, maybe Azure File Service, and use your profile disk from another storage device, yeah, you can benefit from that for sure. And if you use ephemeral disk in Azure, that's a great thing in a non-persistent environment. It means local storage, there's no cost, and it's high performance. But it means that your environment needs to be stateless, like non-persistent. So there are many options, and it's great to have options. What if you compare Azure, Amazon, and Google from a storage performance perspective? That's what I did. So I used Jim's model VDI profile, which means 80% writes, 20% reads, a certain like configuration. I used IO meter, and just run IO meter in 3 different scenarios. Standard SSD as managed disk, AWS EBS, and GCP. And I have 2 screenshots of GCP. Not sure if you can see. I'm not sure if you can zoom in. Can I explain? So what you see here, this is Azure, around 600 IOPS. I run 10 minutes. So this is test completed, means 10 minutes run. This is AWS, 10 minutes run, 3,000 something IOPS. GCP, here, it's, let's see, time remaining, 595 seconds. The first roughly 1 minute, there's burst capacity in GCP storage. This is 15,000 IOPS. And sustained, so after like 10 minutes, it's roughly 4,000 IOPS, not 3,939. And we all know that storage has a huge impact also in user experience. Remember the day when you had your laptop with spinning drive and you moved the day after to a laptop with SSD? Or maybe you swapped from drive to SSD? So storage has a huge impact in user experience as well. Okay, let's talk briefly about GPU options in public cloud. Not so many people know Alibaba Cloud, but if you do some investigation, they're a pretty interesting company. We perceive Alibaba Cloud as challenging because they're connected with China. From a technology perspective, but also from a skill perspective, they're an interesting cloud provider. The other 3 we of course know. Right now we use Azure, but this applies also to the other vendors. Everyone has GPU options. The question, what's the purpose of these GPU options? Some of them are designed to run remote visualization, like remote app, remote desktop. Some of them are designed for deep learning, some of them are designed for computing. So if you see on Azure NC6P3, the C stands for compute. It means you cannot use this machine for visualization, like this one here. I'll explain a little bit later why that is. There are different options, NV6 and, sorry for the typo, and V12 and V24. It's like the cloud workstation. It's a workstation type machine with a workstation price attached to that. different like amount of GPUs, 1 GPU. I have customers using 4 GPUs in that single virtual machine. 6 vCPUs, 24 CPUs, vCPUs, 24 gigs of RAM. So it depends on what you want to use with the machine. My simple notes are, well, it's an older CPU. It has a Maxwell GPU, no slicing, no vGPU available, no smaller size. The NV6 is the smallest size today. And storage option VOR, that's what I mentioned earlier. Amazon, they have more GPU options you can use for DaaS. G2, an older based, Kepler-based GPU. G3, Maxwell-based GPU, electric graphics. And graphics with AMD specifically, but that's for the upstream solution. So it's not like an infrastructure play you can use and then use the AMD GPU. It's part of the bundle Amazon provides for the upstream. Often we use the G3 machines as sort of cloud workstation, modern GPU, but quote downside, events, is lower clock speed. So if you have apps which require high clock speed, then this is what it is. You cannot say, hey, I want to use a 3.5 gigahertz CPU with an M60 GPU. That combination is not available as far as I know. Maxwell-based GPUs. Maxwell is an older, might still be good enough, right? But it's an older based GPU. There's Pascal, there's Volta, there's Turing already. But G3 is based on Maxwell, like with Azure as well. GCP is an interesting platform, also from this perspective. There's a range of CPU clock speed. You can sort of configure your workstations. A little bit more flexible than others. But there's no vGPU, so no slicing of GPU. And there are more, also newer GPU options, like P4, that's the option I use often, T4 and P100. And the NVIDIA licensing is in all 3 examples, like part of the price you pay per hour for the machine, or pay per minute for this machine. And that comes to this topic. So what if I want to use a V100 in Azure? Well, there's a machine called NC6V3, the machine I used. And that's just the screenshot of that machine. So you see here NVIDIA Tesla V100. So it detects, all works, and it works. But the challenge is there is no NVIDIA license attached to that. And don't get started about NVIDIA licensing here. It's being recorded. But NVIDIA licensing in general is challenging. But in public cloud, even more challenging because, well, I don't want to have like a perpetual license or like an annual contract for licensing. I just want to use this machine maybe for 3 months. And there's no licensing scheme for that. So that needs to change, if you ask me as well. And then you can use the V100, if you have to buy a license, in sort of virtualization mode. Yeah, so that's what if you want to use the V100, in sort of virtualization mode, it's possible. But it means you need to apply this which is not really like dynamic cloud service. Is what it is. Okay. A couple of minutes left. Last night I wrote down like, hey, this already is a lot of info. Okay, how can I share one slide with like my personal notes? And I will just do like this. Which gives me the option to have a little water so you can quickly read what is here. Start with why. If we don't know what the use case, the challenges, and ideas are, then the solution is always right or wrong. So, as a consultant, it's good to understand the idea challenge from a customer. This is the topic around exchange to Office 365. And be ready. Make sure you have the right skills and mindset in a cloud context. On-prem versus public cloud. My view, like it's my personal note, so my view is it's theoretically hybrid. I mentioned like Outpost and Hub. For me, is also a recognition that the future is hybrid. Understand DaaS core and map with your requirements. Sometimes DaaS is not possible to be used, as I explained earlier, and many times it is. Is multi-clouds, so Or hybrid clouds, is that something important for you or not? Keep apps and data close to each other. I mentioned that twice already. Understand licensing, the three things I mentioned earlier. With A&D, more options are coming in public cloud. Not public clouds, not multiple. It's Azure only today, which is a pity, if you ask me. It would be great if all clouds can support Amazon. All clouds, Amazon and Google can support A&D. But we'll see how that will go. Unlimited scale does not exist. I can mention names, but if I imagine I want to run a big event and I need 1,500 GPUs for that particular week. I want to make, and I mentioned GPUs specifically because these instance types are more limited than just general purpose machines. I want to make sure that I connect with the cloud provider, like the IaaS provider, that these machines are available. That could be a reserved instance, but if it's just an event for 1 week, I don't want to use a reserved instance. So I want to make sure that that is available. There are regions where certain instance types are not available, especially from a GPU perspective, like South America as an example, very limited or not available. Or sometimes they just run out of capacity. Read news, Azure region in the US, they run out of capacity. Sometimes that happens. This is like the storage and GPU performance as I mentioned earlier. And this is just a note I just add, which has nothing to do with DaaS, but I believe in our industry we compete, but we also work together. And that's the reality. So you can say, well, we and we compete with Amazon, like we at Nutanix, but we also work together. We compete with Microsoft, we work together. Just, well, enjoy. Instead of like hand wrestling and gorilla versus T-Rex, well, that's reality. Be normal. That's what I would say. But that may be just the Dutch guy in me, normal guy. But I truly believe, like in our industry, we should emphasize this more. I believe that if you're just nice to each other, business-wise and personal life, then life is much easier. Thanks.